Alrighty. First one. How does literature or any kind of text reflect, show, or demonstrate the survival of humanity? And why is this important? Anybody want to take the floor?
Okay, so what I put is that we got to learn about like the importance of survival and humanity. I put in the story that we read, how to build a fire. We got to see all the experience and the things that he had to do to survive, and then he ended up not surviving.
I agree with that, and it kind of shows how like he was very determined to survive, and how that it affects humanity, and he did not stop until he died.
I wrote in The Most Dangerous Game how he had to, what lengths he had to go to survive, and just how he overcame the fact that he was the underdog.
I think literature shows that nature will always win in the long run, and that you should never underestimate nature.
I put that if we could learn stuff from this book, so it can help us learn more and make less mistakes, so we can evolve and try to overcome ways that those mistakes can happen more often.
I agree with you, because in how to build a fire, no matter what he does, he ends up dying at the end.
I agree with what Grace and Hayden said. Even when somebody's trying really hard to survive, they still not may overcome it, like in To Build a Fire. But in The Most Dangerous Game, our protagonist managed to overcome the adversity as the underdog of the situation.
I think To Build a Fire shows how the man was ignorant towards nature, and he thought he could survive, but in the end, he did not survive.
So we basically underestimated nature.
Yeah, because he was ignorant.
And in The Most Dangerous Game, Rainsford kind of uses nature a lot of the time to get higher against the other guy. What do you think, Jacob?
Well, going off what Eli said when he was talking about how he was ignorant about it, and once his matches went out, he dropped his matches into the snow, he started freaking out because that's when he finally realized that he was screwed.
I agree with Jacob because it shows that he's going to have to overcome it, and he wasn't thinking about it.
In The Most Dangerous Game, it shows that even if you have the lower amount of resources, you can still somehow overcome as long as you know what you're doing with the resources that nature provides.
I agree with Danny because it's all about having the right mindset to survive, and Rainsford had that mindset.
Also having good strategy and try to not let your emotions take over what you're doing.
Adding on to what I just said about the mindset thing, when the cave boys had been trapped in the cave, they had to eat. I think wasn't it just butter, or
That was a
what?
That was the one with the landslides.
Oh yeah,
People too.
that and when the kid in Nepal had to eat just his shirt, he was just having the right mindset of just what?
Butter and
What?
butter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He didn't eat it.
Yes, he did. That's what it said. Oh my gosh.
Hey, keep on going.
Anyway, they had the right mindset, and that's what mattered. Eli, what do you think?
About what?
Just the mindset of how people should have when they're about to survive something.
Well, I think people should have an optimistic mindset because there are studies that people who were put into survival situations, and if they had an optimistic mindset, they turned out and they had a better chance chance of surviving.
I agree with Eli because if you have a more positive mindset, you're going to have more will to live, which means you're more likely to survive.
I agree with what Grace said because in the Thai Cave Boys, when the surfers or the divers, first found them, the scientists thought that they would have been like really mad because it was just those 13 stuck in there and they would have been sick with each other. But they showed a strong mental mindset and they were joking around with the divers when they came and they looked really happy, even though they hadn't ate or drank for days.
Would you like to add anything on
Really off of what they said, it has been, like, there have been studies that have shown that if you have a more positive mindset, you're most likely to survive in dangerous situations.
Danny, would you like to add on to the mindset talk?
I don't really have much to.
Do we want to move on to the second question?
Yes, like Harrison was talking about, if you have a mindset, like when we read the Thai Cave Boys in their article about how positive mindset.
How does literature evaluate and celebrate the survival of humanity?
It can write down what to do and what not to do of survival, and can write down what, like, the history, so we don't repeat that. Like, if it's bad history, we don't repeat it, and it helps us figure out what to, like, in pandemics. It helps us remember what they did to help them survive, so it can help us.
I think from literature, we can see stories about people who survived harsh conditions or survival situations in nature, and like what they did to survive, and like the guy who's stuck in the fall under the building, what he did, and other people can learn from that.
I agree with what you guys said, but I believe it shows that humanity is for survival, but sometimes our morals can be questioned while we try to survive. Like in the most dangerous game, although like he did what he had to do to survive, he still had the guilt of having to kill someone.
Agreeing to what Eli said earlier, I think it's good that we read these stories because we have an inside view of what these people went through, and probably not. If we were ever in those situations, we might know what to do.
Do you have anything to add on that, Aubrey?
I'd like to say, literature kind of celebrates people's survival. Like, after, like, a traumatic event, the people manage to carry on. Like, in The Seventh Man, when the protagonist gets older and goes back to the beach, he heals from the event and he actually is willing to go into the water, which nearly killed him and then killed his friend.
So, just clarifying, when they went into the water, I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. Like, how does that, like, connect with surviving?
They survived nearly being killed in a hurricane, if I recall. And then a close friend of his also was actually killed in the hurricane. And after that, he was quoted on saying that he actually had to move away from the beach because he was so badly traumatized. But he managed to go back there and willingly step in the water without fear of it coming up and trying to take him.
So, it's more about just being mentally surviving it, not really physically.
Yeah, physical too.
Yeah, because he mostly got mentally injured by it and got traumatized by it. But after a while, he accepted it and he healed from it. So, yeah, I'd agree.
Well, I feel like nowadays there's a lot of different types of literature. Like, you can go to a bookstore and find, or Amazon, you can find like survival guides. That's one way literature can help us.
going off what Eli said, you can like go to a library and like they'll have books on like all these different like plants and animals and like how they can harm you or how we're harming them and like how we can help them or make sure we stay away from them. Like some berries are poisonous, and if we eat them, we're gonna most likely die. And like we can stay away from those types of berries, like if we go out camping or something.
Going off of what Jacob said, there are most likely books, and there are books more, that that can teach you how to make medicines and healing stuff out of like plants, like nightshade and stuff like that.
I agree with what Danny said, like how in the Hunger Games they have to go through like a lot to survive, but in the end they get like celebrated for it.
I think it's good that there's books of that because we can use our knowledge and strategy. In the end, it all pays off.
Does anyone have to say anything else about that?
Going off of what Eli said about there being books, I know that there are some books where someone has written about something that they went through and how they survived it. Those books can like help people figure out what like things that they should do to work to survive like similar situations.
And those are good ways to celebrate and evaluate surviving.
What do you guys think is the biggest takeaway throughout this entire unit?
That humanity will always do what it takes to survive, and it ends up paying off.
Jacob, Danny, what do you guys think is the biggest takeaway from this entire survival unit?
That no matter what, people will always thrive to their morals. Like in the most dangerous game, Rainsford didn't want to play Zoroastrian because he didn't agree morally that killing people was right. So I believe that if you always people will always try to stick to their morals before they try to agree with someone else.
Personally, what I learned was if you're ever in a survival situation, you need to have a strong mental composure. And if you're ever going into one, you don't want to be ignorant of nature, and you need to know the power of nature. Just like I learned to build a fire, and also strong mental composure from the Thai cave boys.
How could you guys apply this to your daily lives?
You can reflect on your own life and like see what situations you've survived, whether like they're life threatening or not.
Like if you read a book about something like what they did to survive it once they got like in a plane crash, or if they were on a shipwreck, you can learn something from that just in case it might happen to you.
Yeah, to go off what Danny said about that, there are like guides and stuff, but like just reading maybe a book about a story can also help. Because in the first book of the Hunger Games, one tribute accidentally eats some poisonous berries and dies, which is kind of like a warning of you should know something fully before you eat it, so you know it's not deadly or you won't get sick. And then another time in Warriors Force of Secrets, one character nearly eats death berries, but luckily is stopped prior to actually managing to eat them.
Some personal experiences I found if you ever in extreme like heat or cold, and if your stress goes up in the situation may become worse, so you need to keep calm.
I agree with Eli because we humans are driven to explore the unknown and discover new places and like push boundaries. Sometimes it's not the smartest idea, so you have to really think to yourself, why am I doing this and what you're going to get yourself into. And we learned that those people who did go through those experiences end up with having lots of trauma and mental illnesses later on.
And if they're with someone with those things happen and they lose that person, they tend to blame themselves for that person's loss.
All right, very good, awesome discussion. Outside circle, let's celebrate. What did the inside circle do well?
They kept the conversation kept on going, and they kept it alive. Every single one of the members that I've seen have added like good info and
Yeah.
added on to other people's information.
Yeah, really built on it.
They also challenged each other to really give out what their ideas was and their point of view.
Yeah, and that challenge, clarifying, does bring a lot of depth to the conversation. Good. What else? You kind of summed it up for us, John.
I know.
Could you hear everyone?
Yes.
Yeah. That was very good. Okay. Well, awesome job. We're going to very quickly and quietly switch positions. The new outside circle, make sure you know what you're tracking. Either evidence if you have nothing on your desk, or content, or discussion connectors. And I do need everything cleared off the desk besides your laptop. I forgot to mention that earlier.
My bad.
All the water and everything else off the desk.
Here's a pin by you.
All right, and remember, inside circle, you may connect to ideas that were in our first round of discussion. Any questions before we start? All right, you may begin.
Just starts. Okay, just to start it up, how does literature or any kind of text reflect / show or demonstrate the survival of humanity, and why is this important?
Then what'd you put?
But what?
First question, you're playing.
What? How does literature? Any kind of text?
Yes.
Oh, I put it shows that we can survive if we actually try. But if you don't think that, it might not go very well for you. I think a personal quote that I've heard from a very good author was, "You don't lose from coming in last. You lose when you give up." And I think that's what happened when we were we're reading about building how to build a fire. He gave up right when his matches touched the snow. Anybody want to touch on that?
Yeah, so that you have to be like, you have to know everything before you go on with it. You need to put yourself in the right mindset to survive instead of just freaking out when something goes wrong.
And you need to like research what you do before, or else, and don't go in it with the ignorant mindset of, oh, I'm the best, I can do it. Like
Yeah.
having a plan ahead of time.
Yeah, you need to like listen to what people tell you about it.
Talking about mindset. It's really all about mindset. You can't just give up the moment that you think something's going bad for you. You have to keep on going, even though the odds are not on your favor.
I take your quote, Jonathan, and I raise you a quote of if you don't believe in the sun when it's not shining, you'll never make it through the night. It's kind of something like that.
To build off what Jonathan said, you can't be pessimistic about these scenarios. You just have to think of the good outcomes where you can make it out, and then there's a good chance you'll actually make it.
Marco, do you have anything to add to this?
Next question. How does literature evaluate and celebrate the survival of humanity?
It shows us how they survived and how they did it. So
It's so that other people can know how to do things and help other people survive, so that they can have a pretty basic idea of how they could survive.
yeah, I'm third.
Who else?
Yeah.
I personally put it can help you survive. It teaches other people things. It allows us to do once possible today because of the fact that people have learned through books.
Like, if we didn't have any like books to learn off of what happened, then we probably would fall down the same mistakes.
Yeah.
We'd be able to.
If you look throughout history, it's when the printing press was first invented that people really started gaining more and more knowledge.
Yeah, it spreads the knowledge with everybody. What do you think?
So what it was saying is you need to normalize it.
Touch that up. You want to touch that up? Like,
Do you have anything to say about about nothing? Never mind.
I think
Go on.
what Cole said was a very good interesting fact that once after that happened, we started learning about our history in the past and our decisions that really brought up, and that brought us to a sense of state where we can look back and say, well, this didn't really well up, so we can go to a different scenario.
Yeah, so instead of wasting your time on the wrong solution, you can narrow it down to what works for other people.
Okay. Is that all for that question? We'll keep going. How does literature shape the survival of humanity?
I feel like literature shapes the survival of humanity by us learning from others' mistakes that they've made in the past.
Like just learning from it, reading about it and all that.
Yeah, and learning, other people's successes that they've made.
Yeah, moving on to what I said in the first question, having the right mindset, like the boys that were stuck in the cave, they had the right mindset to be able to survive, and so did the guy in the most dangerous game.
I feel like mentally, in a lot of survival situations, your mental capabilities are a lot more important than your actual strength and skills, just because being able to keep your cool has some of the most impact on outcomes.
I agree with what Cole said. Michael, you have anything?
No. I really think that it's all about mental and not physical because really mentality is all that brings you on. You can be physically strong, but nothing can break you until you're broken from the mental state instead of the physical state.
Yeah, what I was going to say with that is that in the most dangerous game, you could obviously tell he was like the underdog in the situation, but with the right mindset, he was able to get through it and was keeping calm and collected even though he was in a stressful situation. What do you think about that text, Michael?
That he was pretty much the underdog, and he was optimistic, never really gave up, didn't really care about what odds defied his chances of surviving or not.
Bringing up from that, when he used the many different traps when he visited countries to go hunting, he used the skills of their kind and then also the mindset that they use, like the bear trap that he made from, I don't remember that part. Again,
Was it wild, right?
I think it was. That came back with spikes. He used that. It was a pretty interesting factor because he used his skills that others give him.
And in the most dangerous game, part of the reason he was able to survive was because of literature, and even the hunter in this situation was so good because he even stated that any book that's published about hunting he has read. So that's why he was so good at his craft.
Yeah.
What do you think, Max?
I think that, it's right, you have the literature so you can build off of other people's experiences and knowledge, stuff like that.
You gotta touch up that one. You guys want to go to the next question? What did you learn from the unit of survival that you can apply into your own life right now or in the future?
Like I said before, I learned that you need to stay calm to survive. And if you're not in the right mindset or if you're stressed, then you're most likely you'll most likely make the wrong move and end up regretting it.
You could also have like a plan for if you're going on like a rock climbing experience or something. You could have a plan of trying to not miss a rock or something, so you don't get hurt and all that.
Yeah, and have a plan on what to do if that happens.
I think in the Thai cave boys situation, there were a couple of things that they could have done differently. One is they said it took them several days to figure out where they were. And I think if they would have made plans with other people, it would have been a lot shorter and they would have gotten out of there a lot quicker. And secondly, I feel like in that situation, they could have just handled it better. Like going down or climbing in caves during, the Thai wet season or rainy season probably wasn't the best idea.
Yeah, but do you think the way they handled being in that situation was fine?
I really do. I think that it was their mental state that kept them alive. And I feel like they lifted each other up.
Yeah, because like if they're on a team, they're probably most likely surrounded by each other all the time, and they're all like hanging out with each other. So it makes it like an easier situation to be in with people you like than with people you don't, with make you stress.
Bringing up what Max said, since they have been together for a while now, because of their teamwork, they probably did make it a lot of like a better chance of their survival and not being mentally weak and everything like that.
Yeah, and keeping keeping calm and not stressing out after like the first sign that, oh, I'm stuck or in trouble can really help you, because the guy to build a fire was panicking and was just rushing to try and get out of there, even though if he had just stayed calm and just thought about what he should do instead of making the mistake like putting his fire next to the whatever it was, he could have survived, or at least
Yes.
What does that Michael?
Basically what I've learned is that being optimistic with like bad situations you're in can help you higher chances.
I don't know what Michael said. I've learned that you just need a strong mindset to get through any of these scenarios.
Victoria, have anything to say?
I really don't. You guys just like all touched on it, but going based off of what you guys all said about how they've been together for so long, it makes them seem like they're better because they are with people they know basically, instead of being trapped with someone they don't know basically. So
Or
then,
being by themselves.
yeah. So then they're with someone they know basically.
I feel like having a team to keep yourself calm is better than what the guy to build a fire was, just all alone, just his dog. That really wasn't bringing him anything.
Or in the case of, it's a movie that's based out of Colorado. It's called 127 Hours. The guy pretty much went rock climbing by himself, and he didn't tell anyone where he was or what he was doing. And so he slipped and fell down and got his arm caught under a rock, and he had to cut it off to survive. And if he just would have informed people where he was, he'd be okay.
Like letting people know that, like, for what you were saying, they went on a rock climbing adventure. If you would have let them know, you could have survived basically. So like letting people know where you're going.
Or like planning ahead and just like if you would have listened, like the fire guy, if he had just like listened to what that one guy said about it being cold up there, maybe he would have survived instead of being just ignorant and thinking, I can do this, stop being cocky and stuff.
Going off what Cole said, preparation is really key. Giving out info that you're going to go somewhere, telling them that where you're going to go really can go somewhere, because if you've been missing for a couple of days or so, they can know where you last were. Like the cave boys, they did find them later on, but it took them a while just to figure out where they were. Want to add anything to Mike?
Don't really have much to add.
My favorite text was probably the The Most Dangerous Game, just because it showed how he overcame being the underdog and got up and was able to just survive.
My favorite text was also The Most Dangerous Game because he had his morals where he didn't want to kill anybody, but he had to do what he had to do, which basically had to throw his morals out the window. So he had to live with that on his chest, but it was so the case that he would survive himself.
I think my favorite text was the seventh man, since it really showed that he was only able to, recover from that situation when he faced his problems head on, instead of moving away, just constantly not dealing with it, and just, not having a life because of it. When he finally faced the problem head on, he was able to solve it.
I think my favorite text was also something that really shows what he went through and what he had to do to go out of it. Took him a couple of years to come back to the spot where his friend died and to really go after his fears and conclude them.
What was your favorite text, Tate?
Mine probably the seventh man as well, because it can show how someone can live with a person, and for him it lasted 4 years. I think my favorite text would also be the seventh man, just because he had to face his fears at the end, and he ended up actually being able to, basically, instead of staying away from it, basically.
I think mine would have to be the one about how the kid was trapped and eating the butter to be able to live, because it kind of shows that all the odds may be against you, but with a few simple things you can still get out of it and survive.
I mean, imagine just eating straight butter, off the stick.
Yeah,
So nasty.
that must have been so hard for him.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
But he did what he had to do. There's worse things he could have had to do.
Yeah, just gonna die.
All right. Awesome job, guys. Okay, outside circle. Celebrate what the inside circle did well.
At least.
Grace?
They go off each other's opinions and we're good at keeping conversations going.
Yes.
I like how they made references to different things.
Like, what do you mean by that?
Like close references to movie.
Yeah, used outside evidence, which is helped by the fact that you were thinking ahead of time. What outside of our class could I use for textual evidence? Yeah.
And how they use quotes from each other.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
Cole
From
being
Star
Cole.
Wars. Yeah.
Did nothing the whole time.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
Can we see your doctor
guy
real
there,
quick?
but
At least they talk.
Yeah.
So much
Okay. Good. What other things did they do well? Inside circle. What do you feel you did well?
We really didn't keep the conversation going once it was stopped.
We all built on from each other's conversation.
And what do you feel was the best part of the conversation?
When me and Cole concluded some quotes that we've heard of.
It's from
Very
Star Wars.
inspirational.
I think when
Star
everybody
Wars.
was talking and they were all involved and just
yeah, at the very end.
I think you should go back to
when they were including each other.
Yeah. Your personal at the end, I thought was some of the best of the conversation, because you were going off of your own opinion, kind of in your own, based on your own question versus Mrs. Hartwig's question. And next time that we have our Socratic discussion, you will be coming up with your own questions as part of the learning process. I gave you questions and discussion prompts for these first two. You will, as a class, come up with the kinds of questions that you want to discuss next time. So great job. I'm very proud of you.
Here's an analog. You quit.